found interesting. So, it's been something that I've pondered on pretty much every show that I've done. I just haven't found the perfect way to articulate it yet. But I had noticed like a difference in team unity and passion and spirit this year. And a lot of people have been ranking, trying to rank Purdy. It's only week 5, but okay, how does he size up against all these different quarterbacks? Where would you rank him? Would you be happy if the 49ers traded Dak for Purdy? Okay, what about if the money was the same? There's all these questions. And my thought was, instead of just looking at Purdy as an individual, let's look at him on the 49ers and let's look at him let's look at him in marriage with Kyle Shanahan. And because the two seem to have an incredible connection that maybe Kyle Shanahan either hasn't had at all before, or if he did have something similar with Matt Ryan, although Purdy is currently putting up even better numbers than Matt Ryan, which is incredible. But do you think that there's a better coach QB connection right now? Obviously, only week 5, but this year in the NFL. And have you noticed a change in Kyle Shanahan? And is that exciting to you as a 49 fan?
So I do think there is a better QB coach connection.
Okay.
When you have
Is it going to
Mahomes
be?
and Reed, like
Yeah.
it's hard to say they're not, right. Like they have Super Bowls together. Their offense is still scoring points. They're winning games. Like,
But this year.
but even this year they're 4-1. I mean, I can't. For me, it's one of those ones where if us as the 49er fans are going to be like, but he wins, right? I mean, they're winning. They're 4-1. We can't.
Yeah.
He's winning games. Whether he's getting helped by the NFL or not, like, hey, they're winning. But I think the biggest thing with the Kyle Shanahan and Purdy connection has been um, the way, not necessarily Kyle's calling plays, um, but because this is what he's been calling for the past few years when he had Jimmy. Um, and I think there's question. I know I've seen the questions. What happens if we were to trade Brock for Dak? In my opinion, I think Dak's a good quarterback. I think he's in a shitty ass offense. Shitty schemes don't win you games. And I think Brock Purdy. And this isn't a knock on Brock. I don't want people like, oh, you're
Yeah.
bashing Brock. It's not. Brock's playing phenomenal football. What he's doing is doing what Kyle knows he could do. Kyle's always been a guy who, I'm going to give you the answers to the test. And Kurt, I can't think of his last name, but he
Warner?
played for no, not Warner. It's
Oh.
Kurt Burr. I'll tell you exactly right now. Ben Kurt. He played for the 49ers, played for the
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Packers.
yeah.
He's mentioned it in the past. Kyle, when he was with the Niners, Kyle would ask them for their opinions. Kyle would be like, "What do you think?" Kyle would install plays from other offenses and adjust it to his scheme. He would. So for me, it's honestly just taking what Brock does really damn well and saying, "Brock, what do you like? Okay, now let's do this." He didn't really. I don't know if he did that for Jimmy because Jimmy likes the short, quick game. Kyle wanted
Mhm.
him to run his offense, but also Kyle was kind of forced. Jimmy was forced onto Kyle. It
Mhm.
wasn't. It wasn't someone he wanted. It wasn't someone that like we've heard. Um, John Lynch say Kyle was going through a little depression when we traded for
Yeah.
Jimmy. Like, so what does that tell you about how a coach felt about a quarterback that they just traded for? Now Kyle gets credit for what Purdy's doing, but the credit should be given to Brian Greasy. He's the one who wanted to
Yeah.
draft him. Like he was the one who said, "I've liked this kid from when I was in the booth at Fox. This kid is really good." They bring him on, and that's when Kyle realized, you know what, this quarterback is damn good, and that's what led it all. I think the connection between Kyle and Purdy, it's special. It's Kyle was able to call his plays and feel confident, and I don't necessarily think because I've seen some people like, oh, this is the most confident I've ever seen Kyle. I think Kyle's always been confident. I think the biggest difference is um, the execution of what's going on, the correct reads, throwing with anticipation. We haven't had a quarterback that has done that, but I feel like Kyle's always produced a high level offense. So it's phenomenal to see. I'm excited. I know a lot of people like to put Brock in the top 5, top 10 category. I'm not doing it yet.
Yeah.
I'm not. I think Brock is up there in top 12, 15, and that's not a knock on Brock. The reason I'm saying that is each week climb. Each week
Yeah.
climb. It's a new week. It's
Give
not
him the
necessarily
opportunity to get better. I feel
yeah,
that.
because so now a lot of people will like to quote tweet and come back to old takes or whatever. I didn't think Brock was the answer, and I admit it. I didn't think Brock was the answer. Is he proving me wrong? Hell yeah, he is, and I'm proud of it. So the thing is with Brock, it's can you do this for an entire season? Right? We
Mhm.
haven't seen it. Same thing with any quarterback that I do when I talk football. I'm not gonna just label you like Patrick Mahomes' first year threw 55 touchdowns, right? The first year he fully started, won MVP or whatever. I was still like, damn, can he do it again? It's not hard. We've seen players come in 1 year. Joe Flacco, for example, phenomenal 1 year, right? So whoops the entire playoffs. Doesn't throw an interception, falls off, right? So we've seen quarterbacks come in and fall off, and I'm not trying to say this to be like to bash Brock. I'm not doing that. I know people will
Yeah, yeah.
take my like a lot of people who watch shows will take what we say and spin it in a narrative. I think Brock and Kyle is special, but I like to be able to hold everything off. I got excited about Jimmy after 5 games, and then what happened, right? So
Yeah.
for me, I've learned from the past. I thought Jimmy was legit after 2017 for 5 games. I was super excited about him and then he let me down. So right for me, as a fan who learned from the experience and the heartbreak, I'm kind of staying back and like I'm just coming for the ride. Like whatever you prove to us is what you prove to us. Whatever you become is what you become, and I'm excited about it.
I like that perspective. I agree. I think Kyle Shanahan recently was like on KMBR and he said that he feels like his playbook is completely open, including down the field passes that he can call anything for Brock Purdy. But they have also both spoken about how they are extremely collaborative and they definitely make sure to call plays that each one of them feel very comfortable with. And um, Purdy has spoken about like them kind of going over, okay, if they're down, what plays are kind of those money I'm going to give you no matter what plays. Hold on, let me plug in my app before it goes away. Oh, my bad. Um, but um, sorry, let me gather myself. Um,
You're
I
talking
do
about
think that
KNBR.
yes, Kyle Shanahan went on KMBR and did talk about how much more comfortable he's felt collaborating and communicating with Brock Purdy. Now, whether or not that's like specifically something Brock Purdy has been able to do, I kind of hypothesize that Kyle Shanahan maybe had a little bit of I don't know if resentment would be the right word, but Jimmy was kind of forced upon him. Kyle Shanahan, it's well documented, wanted Kirk Cousins. They ended up trading for Jimmy G. He did well enough for them to stick around, but it kind of seemed like some like it was like an unhappy marriage, but they both were like successful enough that they were like, okay, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But also, it's not completely, the entire time there was always rumors that they wanted to move on. So we knew that Kyle was not 100% sold. And I think that he might feel like a sense of re-inspiration um, having Brock Purdy and kind of knowing maybe that he needed something different to get over the hump with Jimmy. And maybe he feels like even though Purdy doesn't have the strongest arm or whatever, maybe he feels like whatever Purdy brings to the table does provide that difference that he was really craving from his relationship with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think a lot of that comes down to they both have that same mindset and they both are chasing that one ultimate goal. Brock Purdy is so mature for his age. And Kyle Shanahan has talked a lot about their communication. And if you contrast that to the way that Kyle and all the team players have talked about Jimmy Garoppolo, him not answering the phone in the offseason, him maybe feeling a sense of complacency, like he was, probably felt
Mhm.
like I'm a good football player. I just made $100 million, and this is probably who I'm going to be. Where Brock Purdy is still on a rookie deal. People still to this day, if this was Trevor Lawrence, he'd be the unquestioned MVP frontrunner right now. But because it was a seventh round pick, because um, he's on a team with all these weapons, which Kyle Shanahan and he doesn't have maybe the physical attributes as much. Brock Purdy still faces a lot of questions, which he should, but I think that maybe lights a fire within him. And so both Kyle Shanahan
Mm-hmm.
and Brock Purdy have this like sense of determination to kind of maybe prove their doubters wrong. And they've noticed like that in like coming together, someone said it really beautifully. They called it like a composer and an orchestrator. Like they need to work in tangent or in tangum. I'll learn words later. In titanium, they need to work together in order to put on the show. And that's kind of how I feel Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy have been, is them learning how to their belief in each other and their trust in each other that the other guy wants what they want as much as they do. Or maybe Kyle Shanahan probably second guessed that with Jimmy in the past, maybe thinking Jimmy isn't as dedicated as to this as I am. I think that they're both bringing out the best in each other, and they both have this maybe sense of, I mean, they haven't lost, so they might be having in kind of a honeymoon stage, but I think they both also trust that even if there were lulls, that the other person is equally as dedicated to kind of overcoming those challenges to each other and making the other person better. And I think that is kind of like cyclical, and seeing that maybe inspires the rest of the locker room, because they can, like, the locker room believes in Kyle Shanahan. So Kyle
Mm-hmm.
Shanahan believes in Brock Purdy, then everyone, like, it's cyclical. They all end up believing in each other and really getting behind each other. But yeah, I think when maybe contrasting Jimmy and Purdy, it might be a little less. Obviously, Jimmy had some erratic plays and turnover problems, but I actually think even if Brock Purdy were to go through a lull like that, that maybe the attitude wouldn't be the same from Kyle Shanahan. I think he's so much more open and excited, and seems more joyful, and uh, he's done more in-game adjustments and all that stuff. And I think that all boils down to his like trust that Brock Purdy is as in it as he is. I think that makes sense. I think even in life, in normal relationships, I think when you feel
Mm-hmm.
supported, when you feel believed in, when you feel like the other person is giving as much effort as you are, that inspires you to work harder. If you go into work, or if you're in a friendship and you feel like your friendship is or your friend is always if they're sick, they're bringing you soup. If you're going through something, they're going to answer the call. They're going to be the one that helps you move. I think that kind of inspires you to be a better friend back. Like when someone
Mm-hmm.
treats you well, you also want to do that. And I feel like I've seen that within them, and that could potentially be what was an issue with Kyle and Jimmy. And then I think as the years went on, maybe it became more apparent and soured even more. And maybe just like the regular season wins couldn't really cover up the issues that they might have had. And I think now Kyle just seems like a new man, and Purdy just seems really happy to be there and pretty dedicated and extremely mature for his age.
And I
So
think it goes back to kind of, we're mentioning Jimmy Garoppolo and stuff like that, right? I think it goes
mhm.
back to Kyle Shanahan maturing from Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance to Brock Purdy. With Jimmy Garoppolo, didn't really give him the confidence. When you hear, as a quarterback, when you hear that your head coach was depressed when he traded for you, that's kind of like a shot in the, like a slap in the face, right? And then
Mhm.
with Trey Lance, you get drafted third overall, and then the head coach doesn't really give you the confidence he should. And then to Brock Purdy, he's learned. Kyle Shanahan's learned. He's evolved. He's matured from those two quarterbacks to Brock Purdy. So when you look at it, it's maturity from Kyle as well. And I think he deserves the credit for maturing and understanding as a head coach. You gotta instill confidence in your players.
Yeah.
I like to compare the Niners situation right now to the championships of the Golden State Warriors. Okay. And I'm gonna
Okay.
break it down this way. If you're a basketball fan, you guys all know the Warriors have had a phenomenal team for the last 10 plus years, right? So
Mhm.
the Warriors had KD, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, right? Four superstars essentially. The way I see it is you have your Christian McCaffrey, who is essentially your Steph Curry. The gravity is everyone, all eyes are on him, right? Takes extra players with him. Now you have your KD. You can consider it Brandon Ayuk. You have Chris, and you got Roscoe's in the chat saying Warriors stink. Roscoe's, Your Lakers suck, bro. Your Lakers suck. Let's be real. Um, but you have your um KD, essentially your Brandon Ayuk or Debo Samuel, however you want to consider it. Clay, the other one. To me, what I see Brock, and it's not a knock on Brock because Draymond's a Hall of Fame player. I think they make the right play, they make the right read, they do the right thing. They're a feisty ass teammate. They get in their teammate's face. Brock, like to be honest, that's kind of how I see him right now. I'm like, hey, you're kind of like that kind of person. You make the right reads, you do the right. You're not necessarily taking the credit. Do we see?
Mm-mm.
Have you ever seen Brock take the credit like that's my offense? It's no.
Yeah.
It's we.
Yeah.
We are doing great. And I
Yeah.
think that's the best thing I've seen from that's kind of how I've kind of explained it to a couple of people lately, and they're like, oh, okay, that makes a ton of sense. Not necessarily now, Draymond's a great player. And Brock, he's a great player, but they're not that they're gonna get criticized because who they play with. Oh, you play
Yeah.
with great, you get carried by XYZ. And I think that's the biggest issue right now is people are criticizing them for who they're playing with. Um, since we're on the